The Atlanta Falcons defense, in my opinion, is not as bad as what people think. Now, when they decided to take Michael Penix 8th overall in this past year's draft, of course, we were all looking at Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris like, what the F are you fools doing, bro? You fools already paid Kirk Cousins all this damn money. You should have took Dallas Turner. But, after doing some research and going through the Falcons defensive line and the young upside that they have when it comes to their edge rush position, I understand why they decided to pass on Dallas Turner in the first round when you got a guy like Arnold Ebiketie who could have a breakout season this year. This dude had 6 sacks and 28 quarterback pressures and only played 384 snaps on defense for Atlanta last year. If this dude ends up being a full-time starter for the Falcons this year, I can easily see him getting a 9, maybe 10 plus sacks this year. Now you got Braylon Trice, who I felt was one of the biggest steals in the draft. You got him in the 3rd round. If he can beat out Lorenzo Carter, he could be what Max Crosby is to the Las Vegas Raiders. I think he's that good. I had a 1st round grade on him. He has a high motor. If you go and you look at that Michigan game, yes, it was a slaughter fest, but he was the only player on Washington's defense making plays in that game. It seems like every time somebody was making a play for the Huskies against Michigan, it was him. He was a factor in the run. He was also really good at getting after J.J. McCarthy. Like, that dude was a force to be reckoned with last year for Washington. And I was really surprised that he fell all the way to Atlanta in the 3rd round. And that's what kind of made me change my perception about their decision to pass on Dallas Turner in exchange for Michael Penix. Because Braylon Trice, I really thought he was going to be a late 1st rounder, early 2nd round guy. And Arnold Ebiketie, I really think that this dude is going to end up having a big season this year. The interior of your defensive line is also pretty good. You still got Grady Jarrett. We know how good he is when he's healthy. You got David Onyemata. Now you got this Rook Rojo guy from Clemson. He's going to be really good against the run. He still needs more refinement as a pass rusher. But if you watch his Clemson tape, this dude is very violent, very powerful. Like, I had a lot of fun watching this dude play at Clemson last year. This dude has some really good film when he's just pushing guys, running guys over, just powering through guys with a fast first step. Like, it's really fun watching this dude. And one thing that gives me a lot of confidence that the pass rush is still going to be pretty decent despite losing Ryan Nielsen, because Ryan Nielsen, Atlanta's defensive coordinator last year, he was a big reason why your pass rush made such a gradual improvement compared to how it's been in years past. Now, you lose him to Jacksonville, but you got Jimmy Lake replacing him as the defensive coordinator. Now, Jimmy Lake has been a defensive coordinator before. He was a defensive coordinator for Washington before he ended up getting the head coaching job there and getting fired. But when he was calling the plays on Washington's defense as their DC, their defense was one of the best in college football. And Raheem Morris, last year, he did a great job of developing some of the young talent that the Rams had. Because remember, most people didn't think that the Rams were going to be as good as what they were last year. They thought at best they'll be a 7-8 win team because of the amount of young guys that they had to play on defense. But you think of a guy like Kobe Turner, who had a really outstanding rookie season. He played on the interior of the defensive line for the Rams. Raheem Morris was a big reason why a lot of those young guys stepped up the way that they did. So I think that he can do the same thing that he did last season with the Rams and Atlanta. Like, there is a lot of young, talented upside on the front 7 of this defense. I mean, you look at the linebacker unit, this is probably one of the most underrated linebacker cores in the National Football League. Not a lot of people talk about how much talent and depth Atlanta has at linebacker. You got Caden Ellis, who's entering his 2nd year with the Falcons after they signed him in free agency last year. He's a jack-of-all-trades guy. He had 122 tackles, 4 sacks. He was 4th in QB pressures from linebackers with 26. He had 11 tackles for loss. Like, this dude was freaking everywhere. Then you got Nate Latman, who was a UDFA from 2022 out of Colorado. He ended up stepping in and having a fantastic season in replace of Troy Anderson, who got a season cut short like week 2, week 3 due to a shoulder and pec injury. And he was a monster. He had 2 sacks, 7 tackles for loss. He had an interception, a few pass breakups, and over 100+ tackles. And then you got Troy Anderson coming back fully healthy. I still think that Troy Anderson is a starting caliber linebacker. So if you have a guy like Caden Ellis or Nate Latman, God forbid, gets injured, you can still have a guy like Troy Anderson come off the bench and still give you like starting caliber linebacker play. So you got a lot of good depth at linebacker and on the interior of your defensive line. I know you're still looking for proof of, some edge rushers that really could pop off for you. There's another guy that they have from Ohio State. I can't think of his name right now. I'm probably going to have to look that thing up. Zach Harrison, that's his name. I looked it up, people. You're probably going to see me cutting, but Zach Harrison, he had a pretty decent rookie season. He had 3 sacks. He was a former 5-star recruit out of Ohio State who never really lived up to his potential with the Buckeyes because he was playing under a defensive coordinator that underutilized him and wasn't really able to develop him. But with him playing under Raheem Morris, we could potentially see Zach Harrison have a little bit of a breakout year. Now, I'm not expecting him to have the kind of breakout season that Arnold Ebiketie could have, but maybe he can give you 6, 7 sacks this year. Maybe 5, 6.5. That would be pretty good. So I look at Atlanta's front 7, and I'm really optimistic about how good it's going to be this year. In the secondary, you lost Jeff Okudah, but he was up and down for you. You got Clark Phillips, who played pretty well. You got A.J. Terrell, who's one of the best corners in the game. You got DeAndre Alford in the slot. Like, one thing that people don't give Terry Fontenot enough credit for is how well he's drafted. And I didn't even realize how good Atlanta's draft classes have been the last couple of years under him. Like, a lot of the guys who ended up having some good rookie seasons under Terry Fontenot were on the defensive end of the football. Outside of Bijan Robinson, they didn't really have too many rookies on offense that they played. I think they had an offensive lineman that was pretty good. But on defense, a lot of their best players were young guys who were replacing guys who didn't really play that good. Like safety DeMarco Hellams. He was a 7th-round pick last year by Terry Fontenot. He took Richie Grant's job late in the season, and he was a big surprise. He had a really good training camp. He was really outstanding in the preseason. He contributed on special teams. When he got his opportunity, he took advantage of that thing. You got Jesse Bates, who is one of the best safeties in the game. He was a first-team All-Pro selection last year. So there's a lot to like about Atlanta's defense. I just think that there's a little bit too much pessimism, if that's even a word, when it comes to looking at Atlanta's defense and evaluating it for this season. Because I understand that when you look at Atlanta's depth chart, there's no big names that pop out to you. You're probably like, bro, who the hell is Zach Harrison? Who is this Brandon Dolores dude? Who is Braylon Trice? Who the hell is Lorenzo Carter? Like, Lorenzo Carter's probably the only guy that, if he ends up starting on defense for Atlanta this year, I think they will have a problem because at best, he's going to give you 3.5 sacks. He's just one of those guys that's just meant to be a good rotational backup piece. He's not meant to be a starter. Braylon Trice, if he ends up starting over Lorenzo Carter this year, I think he'll give you Max Crosby kind of rookie production because Max Crosby, similar to Braylon Trice, was a mid-round selection, and he ended up having like 6, 7 sacks his rookie season for Las Vegas in his first year. I think Braylon Trice could have a similar impact year 1 for Atlanta. So there's a lot to be confident about when it comes to Atlanta's defense being able to sustain the level of play that they had last year. There were many Falcons fans who wanted to retain Ryan Nielsen, but the fact that Jacksonville got him was a big pickup. But I think that Atlanta's defense is in pretty good hands with Raheem Morris. He isn't going to be calling the plays. He's going to be delegating those responsibilities to Jimmy Lake so he can focus more so on being a head coach. And despite the draft class that Atlanta has had this past year, I still got a lot of confidence in Raheem Morris as a head coach. I pick Atlanta to be the winner of the NFC South this year. Like, if they don't win the NFC South this year, I think that's a fireable offense for Raheem Morris. And you Falcons fans may say that that's a little bit too tough, that's a little bit too harsh, but this is the most talented team in the NFC South Division this year. There's no reason why Atlanta should win anything less than 10 games, especially with the weak schedule that they have. This is a good enough defense that they should play at a top 15 level or better. I think top 15 is the floor for Atlanta. The ceiling probably could be a top 8 defense. They already were really good against the pass. In the pass rush, yeah, you did lose Bud Dupree. You also are deciding not to bring back Calais Campbell, but those guys are up there in age. Bud Dupree is one of those on and off kind of players that sometimes he's good, sometimes he's not good. It just depends on the scheme and the team that he's on. Calais Campbell, like the dude, yeah, he still is productive, but eventually the dude's going to drop off eventually. So with Atlanta deciding to bank on the young, talented core that they have, I'm willing to bet that a lot of these guys end up having breakout seasons, because if you look at Terry Fontenot's past draft classes, they've been really productive, especially the guys that he's drafted on the defensive side from last season. Like, a lot of those guys had some big impacts last year.